Welcome to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires, the show where we talk about finding strength when life falls apart. I'm your host, Melie, and around here, resilience isn't perfection. It's falling flat, getting back up, and maybe laughing about it later. From breakups to breakthroughs, we mix faith, neuroscience, and a little sass to help you rebuild a life that actually feels like yours. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. If you are listening to this episode on the day that it releases, it is actually my birthday. And so this episode is titled Another Trip Around the Sun, What Resilience Taught Me This Year. You know, birthdays are funny. They're like nature's way of reminding us that time is passing whether we're ready or not. Another trip around the sun, congratulations, you didn't fly off the ride. But here's something that gets me every time. Every year isn't just about the candles on the cake or the wrinkles we swear showed up overnight. It's also about the lessons we've collected along the way. Some are wrapped in joy, some are delivered in dumpster fires, and some are snuck in by God when we weren't paying attention. Today I want to share with you what this particular trip around the sun has taught me about resilience, what it means to keep showing up, to keep growing, and to keep trusting that God is still at work in the middle of the mess. Neuroscience tells us that the brain doesn't just stop changing when we hit adulthood. It's constantly rewiring based on what we experience, what we focus on, and what we practice. That's that fancy word that you hear all the time on this podcast, neuroplasticity. And you know, faith tells us the same thing, just in a different way. That God is making us new, renewing our minds, and shaping us day by day into who we're called to be. And honestly, I see birthdays as proof of that. You can't make it through a year without changing in some way. The question is, are we changing in ways that make us more resilient or in ways that make us more bitter? In my own life, I can see a lot of change that has come in the way I've handled my singleness. No, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that suddenly I'm all happy about it. But I'm starting to realize that life does not end just because no one wants to share mine with me. And before you ask, I have tried all the things. If you're new to this podcast, you may not have heard my dumpster fire dating stories, but I have tried dating apps, going to events, going to church events, asking for referrals. But the thing is I know that I don't need someone in my life in order to live a full existence. I don't know that I could truly say that at the beginning of last year when I was fully hung up on a situationship gone wrong, and I have had many of those. Recently, I met someone who seemed like a potential match, and after several dates, we discovered a really big incompatibility. That could have broken me if this had happened last year. But this year, after, a bit of a painful situation, I was able to accept it for what it was. And while we initially tried to have a friendship out of it, we've decided to part ways because that wasn't something that was going to serve me in the end. I was able to let go. I was able to accept this in a way that honestly I would not have done last year. So change happens. Sometimes it's in small ways. Sometimes it's in big ways. But we always have a say in how that change will shape us by the stories we tell ourselves, the way we show up, and whether we let setbacks break us. And here's something about resilience. It's rarely learned in calm, controlled situations. Nobody signs up saying, yes, please, more dumpster fires in my life so I can grow, right? But those hard things do teach us. They strip away the illusions and force us to face who we really are, and even more importantly, who we really trust. These are often the lessons we don't ask for, but that make a big impact in our life. Neuroscience actually backs this up. Stress, when navigated well, doesn't just wear us down. It can build new coping pathways in the brain. In other words, the same thing that nearly takes you out can actually help you rise stronger. Let's be real, okay? Nobody ever puts flood my house on their vision board for the year, right? I certainly could have done without that particular surprise this year. And honestly, I'm still dealing with the aftermath. But here's what I've noticed. I'm coping. I'm making the calls. I'm handling the repairs, and slowly, and I will say very slowly, things are starting to come back together. What I refuse to do is let the stress of only having half a functional home derail every other part of my life. Yes, I've had to adjust, recording this podcast with poles and plastic sheeting in the other room, asking for extensions on my school deadlines, rearranging my routines, but I've also learned something. These lessons that we don't ask for, these ones that feel like major interruptions, they don't have to actually take over your whole life. They can teach you how to bend without breaking, how to keep moving forward without losing yourself in the chaos. And I'll be honest, some days I haven't handled it as well as others. But here's the gift. God's strength has carried me in the places I felt weak. His peace has been the steady floor under my feet when everything around me felt torn apart. And that's the thing about resilience. It's not just about gritting your teeth and powering through. It's about leaning on the one who makes sure the flood doesn't sweep you away. Now, let's not pretend it's all serious. Part of resilience is remembering to laugh, to find joy, and to celebrate the weird little wins. Joy isn't the same as happiness. It's not about circumstances. Neuroscience links joy to our brain's reward systems, yes, but faith tells us joy is also fruit of the Spirit. It's something deeper. You know, just a few weeks ago, I hit one of those really low days. Dating wasn't going well, and honestly, that's the understatement of the century. Work felt really heavy, and my house was still torn apart from repairs. Honestly, I wasn't feeling much joy at all. So I did something simple. I put on a comedy special. At first, I just sat there stone-faced. It was hilarious, but I couldn't get myself to laugh. My heart just felt too heavy. But little by little, something started to shift. By the second half, I was actually laughing out loud, and by the end, I felt lighter. It wasn't some earth-shattering transformation. I didn't suddenly have all the answers or feel like everything was fixed. But that small act of letting myself laugh helped melt away some of the bitterness that had started creeping into my heart. And here's what's fascinating. Neuroscience shows that laughter actually changes your brain's chemistry. It lowers cortisol, which is your stress hormone, and releases dopamine, which is the feel-good neurotransmitter. In other words, your brain gives you a natural reset button. Sometimes resilience doesn't look like powering through with a smile plastered on your face. Sometimes it's as small as giving yourself permission to laugh so your brain and your heart both remember you are still capable of joy even in the middle of the mess. Think of it like this. Joy is what makes the trip around the sun worth it, even when the road feels bumpy. One of the greatest birthday gifts I think we can give ourselves is perspective. To pause, to look back and realize, wow, I made it. Even if everything isn't perfect, even if the year had losses, disappointments, or even lots of unanswered prayers, there's still a testimony in the fact that you are still here. The Bible puts it like this. His mercies are new every morning. And I'd add, they're new every birthday too. So what does resilience look like in the year to come? Honestly, it's not about having it all figured out. It's about staying open. Open to growth, open to joy, and open to God's surprises. Maybe it's learning to say yes to what matters and no to what drains you. Maybe it's letting go of old patterns your brain wants to repeat and creating new ones rooted in grace and strength. So here's my birthday wish, not just for me, but for you too. That this next trip around the sun would be filled with unexpected resilience, joy that doesn't depend on circumstances, and a growing awareness that you're not walking it alone. Life will keep throwing dumpster fires our way, that's the truth. But the good news is diamonds are still being formed. You are still being formed. And that, my friends, is absolutely worth celebrating. Thanks for joining me today. That's a wrap on this episode of Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. If you're walking through the ashes right now, remember, you're not broken. You are becoming. Don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend who needs it, and come back next week for more faith, honesty, and a whole lot of heart. See you next time.